One common question that we get from parents at Doman International is, why does my child engage in stimming behaviors and what can I do about it? And this is a very important question, obviously, because it's a very upsetting thing for parents to see their kids repetitively engaging in these behaviors over and over and over again, and even in a sense getting trapped in this loop of doing a repetitive stimming behavior. So before I launch into the reasons why kids stim and what we can do about it, first let's just describe what stimming is. Stimming is a repetitive self-stimulation behavior that a child with special needs will do to stimulate one of their sensory pathways. So remember, when we talk about the senses, we're talking about 5 senses: the ability to see, the ability to hear, the ability to feel, the ability to taste, and to smell. Those are the 5 sensory pathways. And many kids engage in behaviors called stimming to stimulate those 5 pathways. So for example, some children engage in visual stimming, where they stimulate their visual pathway, where they might look at lights constantly, right? Or move their hand across lights because they are stimulating their vision. Some children engage in auditory stimulation or stimming, right? Where they will create the same sound over and over again. They might hum or yell, or they might seek out the same sounds over and over again, like a toy that creates a sound. They'll play it again and again and again, or they'll listen to the same song over and over and over again, right? So those kids in those cases are stimulating their own hearing. Some children engage in tactile stimming, right, where they want to feel things. They're constantly feeling different textures. They're sometimes scratching surfaces, tapping, right? So they're seeking tactile sensation. Some children will have oral, they'll seek out by putting things into their mouth constantly. So some children even engage in smell stimming, where they'll smell everything, every food, because they want to smell it. And so obviously for parents, this is a very concerning thing, because they realize that the child, while they're engaging in these behaviors, are not really engaging with the world around them. So that's what stimming is. Now, why do kids stim? And what we have found at Doman International over decades of working with these kids is that there are 3 main ways that we can help address stimming. And often it's not at all what parents are expecting, because very often if you look out at the kind of landscape for parents of kids with special needs, they're being told we need to address this with behavioral methods, right? And most parents know instinctively, my child isn't behaving in this way because there's something wrong with my child's behavior. There's something deeper going on, and that's absolutely right. The parent's intuition is right here, as it usually is. So what are the 3 root causes for stimming? Keep in mind as I go through these reasons, it could be one of these reasons for a child, or it could be all of them. The first reason is physiology. And when I say physiology, I mean the function of the child's brain and body. For most children, the biggest physiological component that affects stimming is gut health, the function of the human digestive tract. Outside of the brain, the largest number of neurons, brain cells, are actually located in the digestive tract, right? In our stomach, in our intestines. And the thing is, for kids with special needs, their gut health is, first of all, often very compromised. Often their gut function is not normal. And the issue is that these children are highly sensitive to the foods that they eat. And they often are in need of supplementation to address underlying physiological issues that could be seen in blood work, urine tests, stool tests. And this requires a special set of knowledge, right? Unfortunately, most pediatricians, for example, would have no idea what to do about addressing underlying physiological factors for a child engaging in stimming. These children need a specialized nutrition program, right? They need specific supplementation to address their physiological issues. They need to be getting enough sleep. They need to be breathing in clean air, okay? If they're in an area with pollution, that can actually increase stimming behaviors. And so all of these factors together greatly impact a child with special needs ability to function and can lead to increases or decreases in stimming. So that's the first thing we do at Doman International. We try to address the root cause physiological issues that might be leading to that child engaging in more stimming. We find that once we get that child sleeping well, eating well, having the right supplementation plan, we can start to decrease these stimming behaviors. So that's factor number one, physiology. Factor number two is sensory, right? A child's ability to see, hear, feel, smell, taste the world around them. So the issue is here, right? The child is engaging in these behaviors for a reason. They get a certain amount of pleasure from engaging in the visual stimming, the auditory stimming, the tactile stimming, whatever they're doing, because their sensory pathways are not working properly. They see differently from you and I, they hear differently, they feel differently, and that is leading them to engage in these repetitive behaviors, okay? And, well, what can we do about that? We need to do a significant amount of sensory stimulation for these children. They're going to need visual stimulation, auditory stimulation, tactile stimulation, so that we can create stronger sensory pathways, more normal sensory pathways, so they don't have to engage in these repetitive behaviors over and over again. And that's why sensory integration has been one of the most important parts of the Doman Method for years. Now, the Doman Method was most likely the first place that sensory integration was really used intensively and correctly with kids with special needs. But since then, the world has realized, fortunately, from our work, that sensory integration is very important. But many professionals don't know what kinds of sensory stimulation work best, how much to do it, how often to do it, and that's what we specialize at Doman International. So, second factor is the need for sensory integration. The third factor, and this is the one I learned about most recently, is the function of the vagus nerve. The vagus nerve is one of the longest and most important nerves in the human body, and it controls our fight or flight response, which is our natural response to threats in our environment. And it also enables us to self-soothe ourselves, to regulate our emotions and feelings. And the problem is, for many kids with special needs, with autism, with ADD, and other special needs, their vagus nerves are not working properly. And that means they have a heightened fight or flight response. They are not able to self-soothe themselves. And so they engage often in antisocial behaviors, repetitive behaviors, abnormal behaviors, because this vagus nerve isn't allowing them to feel soothed, right? They just constantly have this subconscious feeling that things are not right. And so that often leads to hyperactivity and stimming behaviors, as we said. And so now, all three of these areas, physiology, sensory, and the vagus nerve, can all impact one another, right? If a child's physiology is not right, if they're not eating well and sleeping well, certainly that could lead to worse sensory function, and it could impact the function of the vagus nerve, and vice versa, right? These three things could impact one another. And so what we need to do is focus on treating all three of these root causes. So for example, at Doman International, we utilize a program called the Safe and Sound Protocol to address the root cause issues of the vagus nerve. So it's not just about doing one of these things, it's about doing all three things, right? Addressing all three root causes. By the way, there might be other root causes out there that we at Doman International haven't found yet. I think if there are, we'll find out about them in the future. because we're always searching for new ways of helping kids. But in the end, those are the three ways we have found we can best help stimming. Address physiology, address sensory needs, address the vagus nerve, and we can achieve maximum results.